We'll keep him busy.
Buckle up for a bro trip 10 years in the making. I'm Michael Jor, and this is Niche Gamer's video review supplemental for Final Fantasy XV. Final Fantasy XV takes a detour around standard JRPG visuals, setting the majority of the game in an area resembling the Midwest United States. The backdrop of the world is mostly grounded in reality with a few touches of future tech and magic, which is actually rather refreshing. It does have its flaws though. Graphical errors, drops in frame rate, and screen tearing pop up quite a bit. While the backdrop of the world design is clean and concise, much of the character design and enemy design is not. Many of the main story characters, nighttime, and dungeon monsters fit stylistically into other games of the series, while NPCs as well as daytime monsters tend to resemble Western design principles, looking as if they were a mix of Mass Effect and Witcher artwork. While the latter works well in the world, the former really does not in the context of the monsters and the world that they have actually designed. Two major mechanics that normally leave a visual footprint in the Final Fantasy series are magic and summons, both of which are severely neglected in the game. Magic is limited down to fire, thunder, and blizzard, all looking exactly the same, just bigger depending on the power level. Summons, on the other hand, look impressive, but there are only 4 of them, 2 of which are only really accessible at the end of the game or when you revisit the game after you've beaten it.
Was hardcore!
When we examine gameplay, we really have to recognize that there are 2 ways to play the game. Players can actually go from story to story mission, which isn't exactly advised, or they could do the better alternative and explore the rich world of Final Fantasy XV in the first 8 of 15 chapters. If you go story to story mission, you will be able to finish the game in about 20 hours if you take your time, and that is being extremely generous. I cannot stress this enough, but if you do choose to play the game this way, you will have an extremely bad experience, as the story is the weakest part of this game. But for those willing to explore the world of Final Fantasy XV, which is highly recommended, they will find a great gaming experience filled with well-rounded and interesting characters that will help make your road trip feel alive. Hunting big monsters, getting upgrades for your car, looking for former king's weapons, and even fishing are all optional, and they are all far more enjoyable than the majority of the story missions. Combat is fun and engaging, having the player zip around from target to target juggling his 4 equipped weapons while triggering team attacks. The 2 biggest letdowns in combat are magic and summons, as they are not only visually disappointing because of their lack of variety, but mechanically disappointing in just how they work. Magic gets doubly shafted as it has a terrible crafting system and massive timers in between casts, while summons use an arbitrary set of conditions not told to the player in order to trigger them. Lastly, on the subject of gameplay, we must talk about the load times, which happen every time you want to fast travel. Actually, instead of talking about it, let me just show you what the problem is.
Thought we'd never get here.
As you can see, these load times are so long I actually would take bathroom breaks or make a snack for myself while I was doing the review. One of the best things about Final Fantasy 15 has to be the soundtrack. It works great in the context of the world, and it lends itself in battle and important scenes very well.
Remember, they're just as scared of us.
Easy as they come.
And on we go.
Right.
You also get the added bonus of HD music collections from previous Final Fantasy games, which can be purchased in shops around the game world. As for voice acting, it has a massive range from cringe to great. It has to be said though that this is one of the better voice acted Final Fantasies out there. Most of the great voice acting actually happens when you're traveling the world and is brought to you by your companions and the banter that you have with them back and forth.
The fun's just getting started. You want to turn back now?
Let's get cracking. Please, sir, I want some oil.
I'm sure our boss Dino would appreciate your enthusiasm.
Most of the cringe regrettably comes from the storylines. The story is hands down the weakest part of the game. For all of those worried about spoilers, don't worry, I will not be spoiling any of the story. Actually, it is pretty hard to spoil the story unless you go out of your way to do so. This is because Final Fantasy XV's story is a massive mess of plot holes and unexplained events. In contrast, the side missions have better characters that are more engaging and more enjoyable to interact with than anything in the story. There are two major unexplained events that deal directly with your companions on your journey that are extremely frustrating. One of them sees a character randomly saying that he has something to take care of. He then leaves the party only to come back much later with a bunch of scars telling you, hey, you should have seen the other guy. This leads me to ask, who the fuck was the other guy? And I have yet to receive an answer on that question. The other major unexplained event has to deal with a character's origin. It is totally brushed off within a minute of screen time, but it is such a huge plot point that it is so frustrating to see it being treated this way. The story also has huge problems with introducing one Deus Ex Machina after another toward the end of the game. One of the biggest ones is actually introduced to the player halfway through the game. It is actually used so that the player can go back to areas that are supposed to be inaccessible at that point in time. This Deus Ex Machina is not explained on any level and could actually be used to negate the whole entire story. The second half of the story is a linear mess that feels like it was a rush job through development hell. You can even see it in the monster levels, skill trees, weapons, and the final boss fight, which is an unfulfilling mess that uses nothing that you have gained over the course of the game whatsoever. That includes your comrades. Yes, in a story about hanging with your bros, the very end boss fight sees you going alone. The most tragic part of Final Fantasy XV's story is there is a much better story, plot, conclusion, and use of everything you've gained in the game already built into the game. It also rewards the player for completing side quests and meeting NPCs throughout the world. Even the main villain of the game does not make any contextual sense, leaving your own companions to say realistically that it is really dumb, and it will leave the player agreeing with them. Final Fantasy XV fights itself at every turn. The melee and team combat is great while magic and summons are a total waste. The beginning of the game is amazing while the end is rushed, uninteresting, convoluted, and doesn't thematically explain itself well enough to justify anything that goes on. Everything outside of the story missions is actually extremely fun, but the story missions themselves are terrible. It almost seems like there are two games being developed at the same time. An amazing world exploration game filled with great characters, interesting concepts, and had the potential to expand, which would have been welcomed by fans of Final Fantasy as a series and newcomers alike. The second game being a nonsensical linear story game that feels like it doesn't need to explain itself in any way, shape, or form. With that said, the world exploration, side quests, big game hunts, and clever travel banter are well worth the purchase. It's just extremely sad that the story is not.
Just hope this isn't some omen.
Gladio, do me a favor.
What?
Push this thing by yourself.
All by myself?
You won't even notice if we just let go.
Prompto, don't even think about it.
Save some breath for pushing. Ignis, come on, time to switch.
Nuh-uh, we just switched back there.
And it's my turn, Noct.
His turn.
My hands are killing me.
You rather I kill you with mine?
Easy there, tough guy.
Any luck?
Only a busy signal.
Hold the phone. Is it just me? Or was it supposed to be way closer?
I assure you, the map is correct. The map said Hammerhead was right there.
Literally next door.
Looks that way, on a map of the world.
The world's a big old place, filled with wonders.
Tell that to my legs.
You guys even pushing?
Hard as I can.
With everything I've got, we'll be there.
Just as long as you stand by.
If you like this video, be sure to check out our other review videos, and if you missed any of the daily news, be sure to check out the Daily Niche right here at nichegamer.com.